50 past the hour now, and new fallout in the wake of a significant Supreme Court ruling this week. Republicans are now taking aim at Justice Amy Coney Barrett, a Trump appointee, after she joined the court's liberal justices to reject the Trump administration's freeze on foreign aid. The 5-4 decision allows USAID to restart nearly $2 billion in payments. Joining us now, NBC's Lawrence Hurley and Christy Greenberg, former federal prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst. Lawrence, just first set the scene for us here. Why is Trump world turning on Justice Amy Coney Barrett? I'll be honest, when I was covering her confirmation battle, I couldn't have fathomed that we would end up here.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to remember is that they're not turning on her for voting to overturn Roe v. Wade. They're not turning on her for expanding gun rights, for ending affirmative action in college admissions, and all these other rulings where she's been a staunch conservative vote on the court. What they're turning on her for, as this USAID ruling showed, is that she's not fully aligned with the Trump agenda 100% of the time. So for some loud voices online who have a lot of followers, 100% is all that's needed, not 95%, and that's kind of where we are right now.
They are very loud voices. But Christy, remind here of what this ruling even was, because it was $2 billion in payments to USAID, but for contractors who had already done the work.
Right. The district court here issued a temporary order saying that essentially the president can't seize money that Congress had already directed him to spend for work that was already done. And all the Supreme Court did here is ask the district court, hey, clarify that order. They didn't disturb this temporary order. That's not to say they couldn't later. They just left it in place for the time being. And that's not such an extraordinary, act to do. And I think it really signals that at least Justice Barrett and Justice Roberts, they're not all that pleased with the president of the United States talking about defying federal court orders. And this may signal at least some solidarity with a lower court in saying that the government can't just ignore lower court orders, that they need to follow those. The one thing I will also say is that when you look at some of the criticism online, it is ugly. And it is all about the fact that she is weak, she is timid, she's bitter, she's a DEI hire. These are very gendered criticisms of Justice Barrett. And given how that she, as Laura said, she hasn't really done anything to undermine her conservative credentials here, those seem wildly inappropriate and out of line.
Well, I'm glad that you bring this up, because I want to drill a little deeper here. Bring back up the graphic on the screen of the way that this vote actually broke down, and you'll see that Justice Coney Barrett is on the same side of this equation as the Chief Justice John Roberts, and yet she is the one being called a DEI hire, evil, a closet Democrat. Those are direct quotes. So what do you think is behind that? I mean, is this just the latent misogyny that all of us have covered within Trump world right now, the undercurrent of it that is just so palpable online? Christy?
I agree completely with that. The one other thing I would say is they also, I think the difference between Justice Barrett and Justice Roberts is that Trump appointed Justice Barrett or nominated her. And so I think given that, they expect that essentially she was going to be bought and paid for. And that's just not how it works. She's showing that she's independent. She's showing that she is willing to evaluate each case on its own and not necessarily always vote for Trump's interests. And that's what anybody would expect of a good justice. The fact that this is a problem for conservatives online really speaks more to their issues than those of Justice Barrett.
We are barely 6 weeks in, and this already is quite the theme. They are trying all sorts of incredibly reckless, incredibly expensive, incredibly ill-advised things. And then those things fail because they can't work, or because they can't handle the pushback against them, or they face lawsuits and court orders because these things are obviously illegal, or they're just too stupid to live. And so then they stop doing these things and they cave and they try to pretend they weren't doing them at all. We're only 6 weeks in, and we're already seeing this for military flights for deportations and sending immigrants to Guantanamo for some reason, right? Those things already appear to be over as of today. Also, this one today. Headline: Trump agency pulls 443 sites off market in real estate reversal. Real estate reversal? What? This is from Bloomberg News. Quote, at 2 p.m. Tuesday, so yesterday, the GSA posted a list of 443 properties it was considering for sale, an inventory that ranged from a toll booth in El Paso to the FDA's research campus in Silver Spring, Maryland. Trump tried to fire the chief of the Merit Systems Protection Board. A court ordered her reinstated. Today, that Merit Systems Protection Board ordered the reinstatement of more than 5,000 people who work for the USDA, for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. 5,000 people who were illegally mass fired by Trump. Those more than 5,000 people must now be reinstated for at least the next 45 days. That ruling comes after Trump tried to fire another person he's not allowed to fire, Hampton Dellinger, who heads up the federal office that oversees whistleblower protections and civil service protections. Trump tried to fire him, too. That is apparently illegal. Dellinger has fought it vociferously in the courts, including one trip already to the Supreme Court, and it looks like another trip to the Supreme Court is probably on the way. But in the meantime, while he has been reinstated, he told the Merit Systems Protection Board to weigh in on the mass firings at USDA, which appeared to be blatantly illegal. That board did weigh in on them. They had to fight their own firings along the way to get there, but they fought them, and now those more than 5,000 workers at USDA must be reinstated. A ruling by a federal judge in California on the illegality of mass firings carried out by Trump's Office of Personnel Management. That ruling appears to have stopped Trump for now from going ahead with his plan to fire more than 5,000 people from the Department of Defense. Quote, the Pentagon's planned firing of 5,400 employees has been temporarily delayed after a federal court decision blocking such dismissals. Same thing at the National Science Foundation. The director of the National Science Foundation has ordered 84 of the 170 employees who were laid off from that agency last month to be reinstated immediately. The reversal comes in response to a federal judge's ruling that the Trump administration exceeded its authority when it outlined steps to fire an estimated 200,000 federal workers. Same vibe, different explanation, or rather sort of lack of an explanation when it comes to people fired from the CDC. Quote, emails went out Tuesday to about 180 CDC employees who got termination notices last month. A message was sent with the subject line, quote, read this email immediately. It said, quote, after further review and consideration, a February 15th termination notice has been rescinded. Employees were told they were cleared to return to work today, Wednesday. Quote, you should return to duty under your previous work schedule. We apologize for any disruption that this may have caused. Associated Press notes, quote, the CDC is just the latest federal agency trying to coax back workers soon after they were fired. Similar reversals have been made among employees responsible for medical device oversight, food safety, bird flu response, nuclear weapons, and national parks. So military flights for deportations? No. Sending random immigrants to Guantanamo like they're al-Qaeda or something? No. Selling the CIA? No. And the Justice Department and the VA and every other federal building they can find in the phone book? No. Firing the guy who's in charge of whistleblowers? No. Firing the Merit Systems Protection Board? No. Firing 5,000 people at USDA? No. The firings at the National Science Foundation and the CDC and the fricking Pentagon? No. No. Not all of them, at least. Not as many as can be stopped. And then there was today at the United States Supreme Court an unsigned, mealy-mouthed, mild-mannered, seemingly deliberately obtuse and confusing little ruling from the United States Supreme Court. That I mentioned it was unsigned, but it nevertheless did brush Trump back. Supreme Court today allowed to stand that court ruling we covered here last week in which Trump was ordered to restart foreign aid funding that was approved by law that he had nevertheless illegally stopped. The ruling was 5-4. Chief Justice John Roberts and Trump-appointed Justice Amy Coney Barrett siding with Elena Kagan, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Sonia Sotomayor in telling Trump no. Pushback comes in all sorts of ways. Lawsuits, court orders, individual officials refusing to go quietly and fighting personally as high as they possibly can to keep standing the systems and protections inside our government that are supposed to protect us and protect the American government from arbitrary and corrupt lawless action. There is friction and resistance inside the government and in the U.S. military when people are being asked to do things that are expensive and pointless and wasteful and embarrassing and ultimately indefensible, even when they happen on Fox News at 7 o'clock. There is journalism and therefore public attention to the indefensible costs and consequences of some of their most hurtful and ill-advised decisions. The local news coverage, for example, of the cost to American families and especially to American small businesses of Trump's this tariff stunt that he's pulling. The local news coverage of this has just been devastating. And it is unavoidable. It is in red states and blue states all across this country, in cities and small towns and anywhere there is a news outlet. And so, yes, today they've started to say, OK, maybe not on some of these tariffs. We will have more on that coming up tonight. But it's also very brave people, very relentless and brave people protesting, engaging in civil disobedience. People are willing to be arrested if necessary. It's also.
So this is another moment where MAGA proves itself to be dysfunctional and destined to whittle itself down to nothingness. Because this is a moment where even the Trump appointee to the Supreme Court, not just a conservative judge, but a Trump appointee, is saying, slow your roll, Donald. You don't have the power you think you do. Look, if you want to pass a law doing what you want to do it. Like, you can do that. If you want to eliminate a certain government program or cut certain funding, you can actually do that. You can go to the House, they can pass a bill. Go to the Senate, they can confirm that bill, and then you sign it with a pen, and then it's law, right? Like, you can do that. But you can't do it the way you're doing it. And this should be a moment for MAGA to say, maybe we're being too insane. Our own judges, our own side, our own voters, our own red states in some cases are turning against us. Maybe this is a time for self-reflection. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to take this warning sign from the people and actually improve our position to increase our chances of victory in 26 and 28, but also just like actually match the mandate that the voters thought they gave us instead of this wannabe dictatorship that voters did not give them a mandate for. But no, they're not doing that. MAGA in its destructive, self-destructive glory is whittling down its alliance. And now the ultra-right conservative Amy Coney Barrett is now a secret socialist or whatever they want to talk about. All because in this one instance, she voted to not make Trump the dictator king he wants to be fully.